I'm the director of the National Institute of Health. My job is to do research or to promote research that the private sector wouldn't do.
Yeah.
The public health authorities really failed during the pandemic to follow gold standard science. You're not going to regain the authority we once had by saying, "Trust us, we were wrong then, but we're now right." We're going to keep doing the same thing. That's never going to work. What will work is, look, here are the changes we've made so that the advice we're giving you is more rooted in reality.
The arrogance is almost unbelievable, The Great Barrington Declaration, what it did is it punctured that arrogance because it said, look, there are a lot of prominent, well-known, completely reasonable, not actually fringe scientists who don't like that's the strategy.
It's a really important advance to make sure that Americans have access to drugs at an affordable price, and I really applaud President.
Essentially, the NIH is expected to take away grant money, right? Correct?
No, we give grant money. I mean, that's
right. So what he told me, the pushback he got was, well, there's no research proving it's bad. Mm. Well, who's going to do research proving it's bad? Like it's like you put petroleum-based products into children, and no one has any incentive to do research that's proving it's bad.
It is an absolute honor to actually use the things I've been working at for decades. I was at Stanford for almost 39 years, which is hard to say, and it was really hard to leave. But what President Trump offered me this chance to lead the NIH. How many excess deaths did you actually have during the pandemic relative to what would have been expected? If you look on the left, the country on the left that had negative all-cause excess mortality through the pandemic is Sweden.
Why would you do something where the evidence isn't good that you have any benefit and you know there's going to be harm?
Now that you're in this position, explain to us how we got to that point in the last administration. What was happening inside NIH that they actually came to such a different and so obviously wrong conclusion?
I mean, it's been an education in many ways. It would be normally difficult to lead an agency of 20,000 people and $50 billion, Rob. But it's the main thing for me is we will have to restore gold standard science.
No increase in life expectancy in this country. In that sense, the NIH has not done its mission over the last dozen years.
No, we give grant money.
And you can do that at NIH.
I'm going to do that.
Make America Healthy Again report is a clarion call to do something really, to understand that that's the crisis that we face.
From 2012 to 2019, literally, it was well, not literally, almost entirely flat life expectancy, whereas the European countries had advances in life expectancy during that period. During the pandemic, life expectancy dropped very sharply in the United States, and only just last year did it come back up to 2019 levels. In Sweden, the life expectancy dropped in 2020 and then came right back up by 2021, 2022. Hello, and welcome to the debut of Director's Desk, where we explore the groundbreaking work of the National Institute of Health and the people who are driving the innovation in biomedical research and public health. I read the Bethesda Declaration, and I have to say, I think it is a very constructive thing to have these kinds of conversations with people in the institution. I'm going to have them. I'm going to invite the folks who signed the Bethesda Declaration that are working here to a round table. We'll hold probably in early July, given my travel schedule. But I think that it's very, very important in science that we embrace dissent. Which is there were, I think 100,000, before it was in the tens of thousands. In 2020, for the first time in history, I think in the U.S., that we had 100,000 people die from these kinds of drug overdoses. There are a lot of threats to human health. Since 2012, there's been no increase in life expectancy in this country.
The NIH's mission is to advance the health and longevity of the American people. It's not to solve every single problem of social justice in this country to which we're poorly equipped.
We're moving toward policies where the science becomes more of what it's always meant to be. A science is supposed to be to promote freedom, not suppress it, as we saw during the pandemic was the opposite.
And that's right. It was, unfortunately and tragically, science became a tool of totalitarianism.
The FDA is no longer requiring or mandating animal testing in certain circumstances when it didn't make sense to do it because it didn't predict what impact those agents would have on human health.
The FDA is taking tremendous leadership in the regulatory space. It has been such a joy.
Right. So, Walter, there have not yet been any cuts. And when I've gone around Congress and talked to folks, what I see, again, I've had the privilege of talking to dozens and dozens of folks on both sides of the aisle. I see basically universal support for the NIH's mission.
So let's fast forward in time. It's the mid-1990s, and there's a huge breakthrough of drugs that actually prevent someone who is HIV infected from developing AIDS.
But we're not going to fund research that is just purely ideological.
So if someone was a grantee hoping to get research funding for a minority health program, how would you advise them to couch that proposal to make sure that they don't run afoul of those new guidelines?
Do excellent science that has a chance of improving minority health. That's how I would suggest that they couch their proposal.
It's like you do actually have the lever and the power and the leverage in order to shift these incentives. If anybody can do it, it's going to be this institution.
Yes, correct.
1918 that had been preserved for at that point, about 85 years or so, and see if we could use these new molecular techniques to fish out tiny fragments of the virus's genetic material.
But they're formalin fixed in this paraffin thing, so there's basically the viruses are dead.
Oh, the viruses are completely dead.
Yeah.
They're blown up into a million pieces.
Okay.
Most of the
so there was not any risk of any lab leak or anything like that.
Oh no. There was no infectious material at all, and
right.
The virus is blown up into teeny tiny the RNA.
Overall, less than a quarter of people have taken it, despite the fact that there's been relentless propaganda and pressure to take the COVID vaccines, the mRNA COVID vaccines, forever. I think did a good job in protecting older people. It should never have been used or recommended or mandated for young people. The key thing is that the public trust in the platform is now gone.
Director of NIH to talk with us today. He was scheduled to be here in person, but the Pope invited him to come meet him at the Vatican, where he is today. I do understand the existential risks of saying no to the Pope. So we're very grateful that Dr. Bhattacharya was able to make time. Anyway, Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Scott. The Pope meeting with the Pope is in a couple of days, just for
60% in 2024. 60% of Americans adult Americans said they'd never take another mRNA shot again. If we're going to invest in vaccines, we need a technology that's broadly accepted by the American people.
It is important. This is one of the very first times he has spoken as the NIH director at an institution, and he chose to come here. So I hope that is not lost on anyone in the room. And I have some really important questions here from you for him.
A policy aimed at protecting the laptop class, the set of people who had the ability.
The laptop class.
They weren't going to lose their jobs. They had a nice house. They could stay separated.
Where do you foresee maybe the most progress being made overall for our society, as it relates to medicine and just making America healthy?
We just have to get politics out of research in medicine. It's also really healthy to open up a discussion, an honest scientific discussion, uncensored, on the evidence on the COVID vaccine. I think I was just listening to your last guest talk. I mean, he's absolutely right. A lot of people have lost trust in all vaccines. I thought I'd talk to you about the fact that science needs free speech. Especially given who was on the panel before with this amazing speech by Secretary Gabbard, and then Mike Benz. You already have an introduction to some of the problems I'm going to talk about. 6-month-olds to take the vaccine. He's saying, let's do the sensible, science-based thing. Let's apply gold standard science. I absolutely applaud him for what he's done. Yes, I think it was October 2020. So,
2020, stand corrected.
But you're absolutely right, David, that it was just common sense. So the idea of the Great Barrington Declaration was the risk of COVID in 2020, and even now, was so much greater for old people than for young people. So the Great Barrington Declaration said, protect old people better, and for young people, let them live their lives. Let them go to school. Let them play with their friends. Let them do what young people do. that to me, that wasn't such someone who's been working in infectious disease epidemiology and in health policy for a long time, that didn't strike me as like particularly novel. That's how we dealt with all other pandemics. But I do think that focusing on the essential things that we do well as scientists and leaving aside the political infighting you'd have better results for everybody.
Our life expectancy hasn't increased in over a dozen years.
The press conference speaks for itself. People can talk to their doctor. You can do your own research.
And when we talk to them in ways where we show respect for their intelligence with data, allow people to disagree, but then have the evidence right there in front of people, I think people will respond.
Yeah. So in fact, we mentioned it. I wrote an op-ed with Marty McCary and Mehmet Oz, where we referenced this specific study, because this is a part of the literature that's more skeptical about the link, right? That's the big Swedish study.
The Biden administration was absolutely terrible on free speech, absolutely terrible. If science can't function without free speech, it's fundamental to how science works. You should be able to disagree with me.
Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who we saw you there, Doctor. You're in the Oval Office with the president yesterday.
Is a great professional, a great person, and a wonderful physician. Jay Bhattacharya. Jay, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me on, Dr. Lee. So nice to see you.
So
today we're joined by one of the most thought-provoking voices in all of medicine, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, director of the biggest medical research organization in the world, the National Institutes of Health.
The focus actually even of the scientific community in the early days of H1N1 were on these severe cases. And they would report a case fatality rate, and this was in the published literature, of very high numbers for H1N1. It was like 1%, 2%, even up as high as 10%, and everybody panicked. Vaccines are not a magical thing. If you have a paper that's published, I would trust you that you've reported accurately what you've done. But if I can't rely on that, then it makes the whole advance in science difficult. I mean, there's enormous consequences for having a biomedical literature published that is not reliable.
Once you take this step that you told people that this terrible disease is going around, you are at risk of dying, and that we have to do this extraordinary thing of stopping society, that it was going to be almost impossible to reopen because of the fear induced.
Focus protection on vulnerable people. Don't disrupt the lives of people that aren't vulnerable so much, because you'll end up causing more harm than good. That wisdom was a century of respiratory virus pandemic management. And I'm really, really high on the United States. The fact that my mom, she grew up in a Calcutta slum, and I'm the NIH director, that's nowhere else on earth could that happen.
Car si vous présentez un débat au public, il ne fera pas ce qu'il faut.
One of the pieces of the puzzle that I looked at in the past, and I'm sort of dredging some of these things up from memory, because the real tragedy is this debate, even this conversation you and I are having, it's nowhere to be found in our public discourse right now. As far as I can see, no one's talking about healthcare policy in a way that is trying to get at root problems. Which is bizarre.
The political discussion over health policy is just unreal to me.
Way. And so the old guard who was used to getting research money for research projects that are just tiny advances beyond what was already known, that early exposure might prevent the subsequent development. But yet, as the secretary pointed out, you still see many people developing allergies, food allergies in adulthood, right? You're seeing this sharp rise, and frankly I don't know the answer to all of it. So what I've been working toward is a second scientific revolution, a revolution rooted in replication, in honest, open discussion, even disagreement. I mean, because that's, science is hard. You're going to have disagreement.
The kind of fundamental biological knowledge is crucially important for patient health in the long run.
Absolutely.
The chronic disease problems of the country are so great that it's going to require a full engagement by the scientific community, and by moving politics out of the NIH, removing taboo areas. The people who went on that WHO junket to China, they came back and wrote a report, and this included someone like a man named Cliff Lane, who was Tony Fauci's deputy. And he wrote a report to the chief epidemiologist of the WHO, Maria Van Kerkhove. And the conclusion was what China did worked.
Tony Fauci or somebody like that. And you have this like desire to be helpful, even though you don't know. And the words "I don't know" are so hard for an expert to say when there's so much at stake. Now, in the last 2000 teens, we are funding research that is 7 or 8 years old. The entire biomedical research enterprise has become too risk averse. Sometime in the 2000s, that turned around. The chronic disease crisis that you see now everywhere, what essentially meant that we were not going to have that promise of like compressed morbidity toward the end of your life with longer and longer lives. Economists have like a ton of these measures.
The new CDC data that's been put out as a result of a lawsuit beginning to show us some pretty significant signals of
obesity, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, stroke. All of these are the leading cause of disability and death for Americans. In the last, it's a decade and a half, since 2010, the U.S. has experienced a flatlining of life expectancy.
I mean, there certainly is infertility that happens from some of these treatments, right? There certainly is irreversible surgery, like major surgery. Yeah, there are complications from that.
We'll talk about consolidation in a second. This unified grant policy. The root problem is that we have a scientific culture that doesn't recognize how difficult science actually is, and it punishes failure too sharply and has the wrong standards of Thank you, everybody. Thank you. It's an amazing audience today. We just have to get politics out of research in medicine.